So here's a story that I feel that hasn't got in enough attention. It's been out for nearly a week, and I haven't heard an uproar on it on social media. But let's get into it.
A CBS News investigation found dozens of law enforcement leaders buying and illegally selling guns. A review of government audits and court records over the last 20 years uncovered instances in 23 states across the U.S., plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., for a total of more than 50 cases. And people who were supposed to protect and serve were selling these high powered guns and making a steep profit. Erin Couchy, who led this reporting, is here with me in Studio 57. She's a producer for CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit. Erin, this is so mind-boggling that these high-ranking officers are getting these guns and then they're selling them to criminals. In essence, the law enforcement officers are criminals themselves.
Who is this mind-boggling to? We in the Black community have been saying this for decades about the corruption in the police department, law enforcement. And yet, those outside of the hood think that we're conspiracy theorists, think that, hey, if y'all would pick yourselves up by your bootstraps and get out there and work and do what you're supposed to do, you wouldn't be going through these problems, getting pulled over. Things wouldn't be happening to you when it comes to the police. There is a big thing, excuse me, back in the 80s. I vaguely remember it because I was still young. But there are some of y'all who don't remember a thing called the Iran-Contra scandal. Now, if I can kind of put it into context, there's a show that most of y'all watch called Snowfall. Okay? If you watch the first, I think I watched the first season and then I didn't watch it after that because of, well, the main reason was because of the guy who the show is really about said that they stole his life, but gave him no credit, no creative control, didn't come and talk to him about it, about things they were putting in the store. They talked to him at first, and then all of a sudden they disappeared, and then they no longer talk to him. That is a guy called Freeway Ricky Ross. Not the rapper, but that man whose actual name was Rick Ross. This brother did time. He did decades in prison. Sentenced to his last time he went to prison, he was sentenced to life, but he got out, you know, fought his case, somehow won. I remember he was out there in Texas County, I think in his last stint. But anyway, this dude showed that the federal government was supplying him with powder back in the 80s to where he could sell it in his neighborhood in South Central LA, California, make a lot of money from it. And the government used that money, allegedly, to fund an Iran-Contra war, which was where the U.S., which is what they're known to do, and they still do till this day, play both sides of the battlefield in order to make sure, they on a winning team. And he talked about this in books. He talked about this in interviews. And he said, hey, some guy named Blandon, I can't remember his first name. Or that might be his last, that might have been his first name. I don't know. Anyway, he was supplying him with powder. And Rick Ross was selling this all over the country, you know what I'm saying? Getting it cheap, selling it, making big money. And they ended up going to prison for it. And after a while, he was kept, arguing his case, pleading his case, like, hey, man, the government gave, this dude here gave it to me, and this cat is working through the U.S. government, the FBI, the CIA, whatever he was doing. He's supplying this to me. And anyway, long story short, you see his quote unquote life story on the show Snowfall. That was a true story, based on a true story. We've seen stories where people say, man, there was a truck left on side the road. What's this show called? The Mayor of Kingstown, Mayor of Kingstown. in one of their episodes, well, the guy he had broken into like a gun shop, stole a bunch of guns, and then somehow the guy got him to bring it back, but he left it like on the side, left it in the neighborhood, and police saw it or whatever. Luckily, nobody got none of the guns. But anyway, there are stories where folks have said, man, it'd be trucks full of guns parked at the end of our street in the hood, just a bobtail truck just sitting there, and you open it up and it's just weapons. And people said that these folks are crazy, or they just conspiracy theories, lying on the police. Police will never do anything like that. Law enforcement never do anything like that. But then, you see stories like this, and you have to say, there got to be some. What they say, smoke where there's smoke, there's fire. There's got to be some sort of validity to their story. But anyway, I just wanted to give y'all that so y'all can understand that to us, this is not outrageous. These are things that we know. Shoot, I've known police too to drop off some of my homeboys in rival gang territory growing up in school. You know what I'm saying? Dropping them off and then leaving. See, but again, these are things that we've seen, we've talked about, and people outside of our community don't want to say anything, which is probably why this story has not like just jumped off the pages of the newspapers or jumped out of the screens on TV like it need to, because nobody wants to talk about that.
Right. So the key is that these weapons are usually deemed too dangerous to be on the street. So they're using their access as law enforcement officials to gain access to things that otherwise wouldn't be on the market. They're saying we need this for our official duties to serve and protect, but actually they're secretly turning around and they're selling.
They're buying them because they're law enforcement officials, or they're requesting them. Tell me more.
It runs the gamut. So there were 50 cases all across the country, and there were different ways they got it. Sometimes they stole it out of the inventory. Sometimes they were their issued weapons by the department. In the most egregious cases, there were battlefield weapons, and that requires them to go to federal regulators, ask for special permission to gain access to them. And just to give you a sense of what kind of weapons these could take out an armored tank. They could go through a building at the other side, hit a target 18 football fields away. They can take out a military helicopter. That's an example from a real case. We found an Iowa police chief in a 3-person police department. Town was the population of less than 800. And he had requested over the course of 4 years, 90 machine guns to get access.
Not even 800 people in a town. You can get 800 people on a city block if you go to the right block, but not in a little town in Iowa. Not even 800 people in a town, and the police is requesting 90 machine guns. 3-person police department need 90 machine guns. First of all, how in the hell would they even issue those weapons to a 3-person police department? I'd like to see the paperwork behind that.
He'd gotten approval. It took until he requested a Gatling-style machine gun that spewed 6,000 rounds a minute for federal regulators to say there's something fishy going on and starting to look into it. He's now serving a 5-year prison sentence, but he's totally unremorseful about it. He just says it's a business. It's not illegal to sell things in this country, and he's appealing his sentence because he just doesn't think it's a crime.
And he only got 5 years. First of all, well, probably only got 5 years because they actually sold actually sold him the guns.
This is a lot to take in, Aaron. And when I'm looking through all of this material, I'm seeing here that your team also uncovered social media posts where the buyers are talking about how they got the officers to sell weapons. Tell me more about that.
So when you're talking about machine guns, you do have to go to the federal regulation because there's been an outright ban in the United States since 1986. No one can have access to them. The one exception is official government use. So they go to federal regulators, but all you need is a letter. It's functionally a permission slip. A police chief signs a letter saying, I need this for department use. So there's literally do-it-yourself videos on social media explaining there's online web forums, and it just comes down to relationships. There's some guys who said, I know a police chief, I know a sheriff, I know a SWAT guy. They just take turns signing these letters for me, and they make it like it's all for fun. Some of these guys just think it's fun to like literally mount it on an armored tank and just shoot it off into a field. And a lot of the guys is totally innocent, and that's what they do. But the problem is there are cases where they've ended up in the hands of criminals. So they've ended up with drug traffickers, they've ended up with arms dealers. There was a case where a police chief, a mayor, and a town it was a member of the town council were trafficking guns and tactical gear to a Mexican cartel. There was a case just last year where they all ended up pleading guilty. It was 2 police chiefs, a sheriff, a Delta Force veteran, all conspiring together with the sanctions.
Man, you see this say types of weapons illegally sold by law enforcement officers. Military grade machine guns, short barrel rifles, explosives such as grenades, sold by law. What? Man, come on.
Russian
But
arms
again,
dealer, and they ended up in the hands of an international gun trafficker.
but again, you wonder why people look at law enforcement the way we do. Don't get me wrong, I love police. You know what I'm saying? I know we need the police, but I'm the first one to tell you. I said in other videos that you need to. Ain't no such thing as shouldn't defund the police. Because number one, if they ain't got no money, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna get guns and sell them illegally. But what you need to do is like revamp the whole system. You know what I'm saying? Destroy the system, the training system, and create something bigger and better. You got all the technology, you got all the learning and knowledge in the world. I'm sure it can be done.
All of that ended up pleading guilty, so we know for sure that they were doing that. And then there was a case in the Northeast where it ended up being used in a fatal gang shooting of a 14-year-old boy who was just standing at a high school football game and accidentally got shot. So most of the cases don't end up in those egregious situations, but they certainly have and do, and these are law enforcement.
And arguably, that's the whole reason why they're supposed to have these permission slips, because once they get out into the public, then they're uncontrolled, and then you don't know where they're going to go next. But I'm also seeing here that there's some former ATF agents that you spoke with that said that they were reluctant actually to charge these officers who sold the weapons. What's going on with that?
So we spoke to about 6 agents who were the lead investigators on some of these cases, and the officers themselves were the ones the federal agents were the ones who were actually really frustrated with this. They wanted to bring these cases, but they each had an anecdote about how they'd had to go to the department they had caught doing this, who had been doing it repeatedly, almost like as a course of business, that they were getting these guns just for the express purpose of selling them, even though they were supposed to be their department weapons. And they just had to say, I'm letting you off with a warning. Prosecutors were generally reluctant to try these cases, according to them.
So it's the prosecutors, not the ATF.
It's a little bit of both. So they say the prosecutors don't really want to do it because the sentences are very light. Most of these cases, people make plea deals. They serve less than a year, just a few months in jail. But we got an ATF memo from a few years ago that described this as a growing trend. That was in 2017. And most of the cases we found actually have happened since then. So it seems to be, it's hard to tell if it's happening more often or they're actually just going after it a little bit more now. But the memo said, it's our job to educate, not investigate. And I actually tracked down the senior agent who had written that memo, and he said, we generally take the posture, we don't question our law enforcement partners. So our partners, we're just going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and it's really only in the very, very egregious cases.
Sounds like that blue wall that the people talk about, that people talk about and nobody wants to believe, but it's there. Let's I want to look at something right quick if I can find it. Let's see. There's actually an article. Let me see if I got it here. And it says it's the story that she created. And it says, police illegally sells restricted weapons, supplying crime. And like I said, I'll put it in the description box. But starts off about the Adair, Iowa city that had a population a little less than 800, with the 3-person police department. Y'all know about the 90 machine guns. And they say the federal agents later discovered the police chief, Bradley Went, was using his position to acquire weapons and sell them for a personal profit. Now we're talking about guns that are illegal to be on the streets. Said jury convicted Went earlier this year of conspiracy to defraud the United States lying to federal law enforcement, and illegal possession of a machine gun. Went is unapologetic and has appealed his conviction. I mean, I can kind of understand it because they sold it to him. 3-person police force, and you sold them 90 machine guns, and y'all didn't think something was suspicious about that? And he says, quote, "If I'm guilty of this, every cop in the nation's going to jail." Wentz told the police just days before a federal judge sentenced him to a 5-year prison term. So all he got was 5 years. That's it. And again, you wonder why people look at law enforcement the way they do. They said they found dozens of law enforcement leaders, sheriffs, captains, lieutenants, chiefs of police buying and illegally selling firearms, even weapons of war, across 23 U.S. states, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C., from the deep mid-south to Midwest, all over. Let's say over the last 20 years, 50 cases of police illegally selling weapons online through dealers, out of their homes, or the back of their cars. That's crazy. So sold a gun enthusiast, often at a steep markup. It said in several cases the guns wind up in the hands of felons. That's the thing about it. Even though you selling guns illegally, you don't know where whose hands them guns gonna be in. You know what I'm saying? So why would you even get this? In 2011, federal agents busted a smuggling ring out of New Mexico involving a police chief, mayor, and village trustee who delivered automatic firepower and tactical gear to a Mexican cartel. Remember what I said at the beginning of the story about the Iran-Contra scandal and how, see what they was doing with the drug money. They were using the drug money to buy weapons to help these factions in this Iran and Contra war, because technically the U.S. government was not going to help them fund that war any longer. So the CIA and them had to find a way to get these soldiers, these armies in these other countries weapons somehow. And they use people like Rick Ross, Freeway Ricky Ross, to get it done without them even knowing. Let's say nearly 26,000 guns were traced from American crime scenes back to a government agency, law enforcement, or the military between 2017 and 2021. Let's see. Like I said, this is a nice long article. Read it for yourself. Just read it for yourself. I'm gonna put it in the description box below. But let's go ahead and finish this up right quick.
Actually pursue. So when they've gotten many, many warnings, when we've traced them directly to a crime, and that's when you start to see charges. So the more than 50 cases, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more out there that all these agents are saying, oh yeah, I said, how do I look that up in the court docket? You're not going to see anything.
Fascinating reporting. Erin Couchy, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
You can find Erin's full investigation into law enforcement illegally selling weapons on our website.
So again, yeah, the police force needs to be revamped. It's as simple as that. There's no two ways about it. What she say that they said she asked some people in law enforcement, how can I find some of this information on the books? They say you're not going to find it on the books. Yeah, man, it's a game. People, police, the law enforcement is a game just like anybody else. Any other organization or faction, they got a lot of people that stick together to keep the status quo. There's nothing new about this and nothing shocking about this. This is what people have been saying forever. So there has to be a change. But anyway, tell me what you think about this story. Leave your comments below. Share it with the world. Let's have an intelligent conversation. You know how we do it around here. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Those 4 things cost you nothing but maybe a couple of minutes out your day, but it means the world to us here. If you would like to support financially, you can get super thanks, super chat, super stickers, or you can go to the description box below. The links there you can click on to help support us financially. Don't forget to go to marlonmorale.com where you can get 10% off your first purchase of all our luxury items. I promise you will not be disappointed. If you want to take advantage of our miniature sandalwood beard kit, you can click on the shop button below. We have a sandalwood beard kit with beard oil, beard balm, beard wash that's on sale right now. Sandalwood is clinically proven to help stimulate hair follicle growth. So why not use the best product on the market? And with that being said, I'll leave you in peace, and I'll see you on the other side.